Thanks for joining us for more lessons in English and math skills. I am Tamika Lodge-Fenton, and I'll be guiding you through City and Guilds Mathematics. Our focus for today's lesson will be converting common fractions to decimal fractions. Let's begin. So before we start any conversion, let us look at where we'd find this information in the Stage 2 syllabus, Stage 2 curriculum. Conversions between common fractions, decimal fractions, and percentages. At the end of this particular unit in Stage 2, you should be able to understand how to recognize equivalencies of common fractions, decimal fractions, and percentages. And today we'll be looking at the converting common fractions to decimal fractions. So let us begin to explore some conversion. All right, so first scenario, my brother and I got individual cakes for Christmas. I ate 3/8 of mine, and he had, I could say 0.125, but let's say the fraction, the decimal fraction as we should. So 125 thousandths of his. Who had more cake left? So that's the question. What must we do here? If you said yes, we need to bring both portions to the same format. Either both decimal fractions or both common fractions. Now, remember what we said we're doing today? So we're going to convert our common fraction to a decimal fraction. Let us go to the board. So we already know that he had and 0.125, and this is actually how we call it 125 thousandths. All right? Now, 3/8. Now, since we're going to convert it to a decimal fraction, it is important that we pay attention to the numerator. The numerator needs to be represented from a family, from a whole, which is a power of 10. So let's see if 8 is a factor of. So I'm going to find an equivalent fraction for it, and let's say 10. Is 8 a factor of 10? No, it's not. 8 is not a factor of 10 because if we were to divide 10 by 8, you'd get one group of 10 and then you'd have two ones still left. So you'd get a fractional representation if you were to divide 8 into 10. So it's not a factor of 10. Neither is it a factor of 100. But 8 is a factor of 1,000. So 8 divided into 1,000 goes 125 times. So that means I would have to multiply 8 by 125 to convert it to 1,000 or to make it 1,000. Now remember, if you are finding the equivalent of any fraction, you must do the same thing that you would have done to the denominator, also to the numerator. So let us multiply the three parts by 125. 3 by 125 gives us 375. So what we're saying, 3/8, and let's read this now. 375 thousandths with a TH there, is equivalent to 0.375, and the name of it is 375 thousandths. So now, what was the question? Who had more cake left? So if this is what I had and my brother had this, who had more cake left? Exactly, he does, because he would have ate less of his cake. So let us look at it now on the screen. So we need to find that we need to make them both, as we just did, decimal fractions, and that's how we did it. So 3/8 is equivalent to 375 hundredths, and we write it 0.375 in decimal fraction format, and here is larger, right? So that is larger than 125,000. Therefore, my brother has more cake left because he ate more. He ate less less of his cake. All right, and as you can see there. So I went further to show you that 0.125, 100, 125, 125,000th is the same as 1/8. So if we were to look at it as common fraction, 1/8 is less than 3/8, which confirms that I'm the one that ate most of my cake. All right, or more of my cake. It's just two of us. All right, so there you go. Let's just move to the next one. I jog with my two friends on Wednesdays. I jogged half kilometer and Martin jogged 25 hundredths kilometers. Stacy jogged 3/4 of a kilometer. Who jogged the furthest and who jogged the least? Yes, so first thing we have to pay attention to, what are we doing here? We're comparing the distance run by myself and my two friends. So we have to figure out how to compare in one format. So let us go to the board again. We are going to look at how to convert the common fractions to decimal fractions. All right. So here we go. Let us begin. So the first fraction we have, I traveled half kilometer, right? And then who traveled? So we know that Martina had traveled. So Martina, or Martin, I should say. Martin had traveled what? 2,500 kilometer. And Stacy would have traveled 3/4 of a kilometer. All right, so let's convert this. As I said before, when you are converting your common fractions to decimal fractions, you need to find an equivalent fraction with the power of 10. So let's look. So if I were to use 10 first, is 2 a factor of 10? Yes, it is. 2 divided into 10 goes 5 times. So 5 multiplied by 2 would give me 10. I must also carry that out for my numerator. 5 multiplied by 1 gives me 5. So right there and then I have 5/10. Now, we would have done place value. Once we did place value, you should understand that when you hear 5/10, we're talking about the first place to the right of the decimal point. So right away I can write this. 0.5 is 5/10. So I've changed that. So that means I've run 5/10 of a kilometer. What about 3/4? So we must find an equivalent. So 10, let's see, is 4 a factor of 10? It's not. So is 4 a factor of 100? Yes, it is. So 4 divided into 100 goes, yes, man. That's what, 25 times? All right. So 4 multiplied by 25 will give me 100. I must do the same to my numerator. 3 multiplied by 25 gives me 75. Awesome. Let's call that now. So it's 75 hundredths. So how do we write that? So we're now not only in the first right place, but we're now in the second. So let's write that decimal fractions. Fraction. There you go. So that means Stacy would have ran 75 hundredths of the kilometer, and I would have ran 0.5 or 5/10. Correct. Now, I'm going to leave you to tell me who did the longest and the shortest journey. Stacy would have traveled the furthest up the kilometer scale there, and then Martin would have done the least jogging at all. So let us just do it together here and just make sure that everyone is where we need them to be. Half of 1 kilometer. Half of 1 kilometer is also, we could look at it this way. Half of a kilometer is 500 meters, and that means 500 of 1,000 kilometers, which would be 500,000. So there you go. Another way you could look at it. And then you have 3/4 of 1 kilometer, and then you'd have 3/4 of 1,000 meters. Why did I put it in meters and not keep it in kilometers? Because if you're doing half of a kilometer, it clearly is going to be less than 1. And we know what less than 1 is, right? It's a fractional representation. So we have to look at the smaller unit, which was used to make up a kilometer. And that would be meters. So the 1,000 meters, you can now look at less than 1. There you go. So 3/4 of 1,000 is 750 meters. And if you were to look at it out of the whole meter, it would be 750 thousandths. And you'd represent it 0.75 kilometer. All right. So we could definitely compare as we did, and it would have been, as we just discussed, Stacy did the furthest distance, and Martina here, you know, so you see, I've been saying Martina from before, would have done the least of the journey. All right, so we can clearly compare when all the values we're looking at are in one format. All right. And we can move on. Oh, just to reinforce, so a half kilometer is 5/10 kilometer, is also 5/10. 3/4 kilometer is also 7,500th kilometer. And a 1/4 kilometer is also 2,500th kilometer. Good. All right, so we're going to look at some actual exam papers that you would see on our City and Guilds paper. So the first item up, what is 1/8 as a decimal fraction? All right, so let us look at what we are going to do here. Can we find an equivalent fraction for 1/8 with the whole divided into parts of the power of 10? Now remember, we had done an example before, and we realized that an eighth is not a factor of 10, nor is it a factor of 100. So we're going to go straight to 1,000. All right, so let us look at 1,000. So we're going to say we want to 1/8, and we want to find the equivalent fraction for it from the whole 1,000. Now 8 goes into 1,125 times. And we know this by now, that whatever you do to the denominator to get it to the equivalent fraction, you must also do it to your numerator. So 8 multiplied by 125 gives us 1,000. 1 multiplied by 125, we know this, 125. So what does that tell us? So we have the fraction here, 125 thousandths, and we know how to write this. 0.125 is the same as 1/8. So your option A would be your correct choice. All right. So let us move to the next one. What is 3/5 as a decimal fraction? All right. What is the equivalent fraction? So every time you are converting from your common fraction to your decimal fraction, there's something that you must ask yourself. How can I represent it in a format where I have the whole is of a power of 10? Why do I keep on telling you to look for a power of 10? Because we operate in the number system, in the base 10 system. We work in what we call the decimal system. And every place in our place value system, every different one, say your ones, your tens, your hundreds, your thousand, or your tenth, and then your hundredth, those are of a power of 10. So if I'm going to represent a common fraction as a decimal fraction, I might as well go into making sure that the family I'm going to represent it is a power of 10. So we're at 3/5 as a decimal fraction. So right away, we know that 5 is a factor of 10. So we don't have to do a lot. So 5 divided into 10 goes 2 times. 2 5s 10, we know this. We also do it to the numerator. 3 multiplied by 2 gives us 6. So right away, 6/10. So we now know that the decimal fraction for the common fraction 3/5 is 0.6, and we call that 6/10. Tenths. This TH and me. All right then, so there you go, 0.6/10. And that would be option C. So next question. What is 6 3/20 as a decimal fraction? All right, so this one is a little bit different, but the concept still lies. And once you pay attention to what the number is saying, remember I said earlier that a fraction is a number. So we have 6 wholes and 3/20. So yes, we have 6 wholes and 3/20 of a whole. So let us see what happens. Now, right, so 20, although it looks similar to 10, it's a multiple of 10, but not a power of 10. So you'd have 10 to the first power will give you 10, 10 to the second power will give you 100. So you see that we skip out 20. Good. So now let's look at the entire number. 6, what is it? 3. No, 2, 6, and 3/20. Great. So we know that 6 would be 6 ones. So right away I can put it over here. 6 ones, but I need to know what the fractional representation is. So 3/20, and right away you definitely know that it's not a factor of 10 because 10 is smaller than, is a less value than 20. So we know that 20 is a factor of 100. So 20 divided into 100 gives me 5. So in order to change, to convert this to another, to find the equivalent into hundreds, I would multiply by 5. I will also do it for my numerator, 5 3s, 15. So we see this as 15 hundredths, and we know we write that as 0.15. So right away, it's that simple. It's that easy to work out. So 6 3/20 is the same as 6.125. So we're finished there. So it's option A. Great job. All right, what is 2/5 as a decimal fraction? So here we go again. We're now working with fifths. What do we do? You can tell me, because I know you've been following and we've been doing this several examples now. You know what I'm going to do. I'm going to find an equivalent fraction for 2/5 where the whole is divided into parts, which is a power of 10. So I write my 2/5, and right away I know that 5 is a factor of 10, so I don't have to use 100. But you could use 100, you just have to simplify as you carry on. So, or you just read it differently. So we have 2/5, and we say 5 into 10 goes 2 times. This now becomes pretty much easier. 2 times 4 gives us, 2 times 2 gives us 4, not 2 times 4. 2 multiplied by 2 gives us 4. So this is read 4/10, and we write 4/10 as a decimal fraction as 0.4. So we now know that 2/5 is equivalent to 0.4. This is your common fraction. This is your decimal fraction. All right. So you would have selected option C. Great job. Now, thank you very much for all that you've been doing. Just remember what we've done so far. We've looked at converting common fractions to decimal fractions. And when you do that, it's always wise to pay attention to your denominator of the fraction you're operating with. And then you want to represent it as a fraction with the whole, which is a power of 10. When you do that, it becomes very easy. And if you practice to call your decimal numbers as you should, the first place to the right of your decimal is your 10th place, then your 100th place, then your 1000th place. Then you multiply by 10 and you carry on. I can't call it more TH place for you, but you get it. Please review your place values so that it's easier for you to do your conversions.